Hi TYB. Now this is the books of 1 and 2 Peter. We're doing these books together because here at TYB, as you know probably by now, we want you to read them together because we want you to get to know the author. We want to get you to get to know his themes, how he presents things. So for the next 3 sections or the next 3 parts, whatever that looks like for you, whether it's 3 weeks or a month, you'll have 3 sections in 1 and 2 Peter. The first video here I'm going to go through is who is Peter? What was his life like? And then I'm going to jump into 1 Peter in the next video and 2 Peter in the video after that and do the historical context. Now, in the New Testament, we know we have the 4 Gospels, Acts, and then the books of Paul. Now, after Hebrews, we have these incredible books by different authors. So you've got Peter, you've got John, you've got Jude. So as you go through these books, realize that this is Peter. This is the one that walked with Jesus. This is the apostle that we see in movies and we go, oh my gosh, it's Peter. This is the one that God changed his life and he became one of the heads of the churches in Jerusalem and the head of the church in this book. And as you read this, realize that you've only got 2 books authored by Peter, so devour them, sit in them. Paul, we've got a few more. Paul, we can kind of take our time and we get to know him, but Peter, we only have 2 books. So really, as you're reading this, realize who this is and sit in these books and know that this is wisdom from an incredible man, an incredible leader in the church in Christianity. So again, it's a 1 and 2 Peter are short books, and we've given you a length of time in them, a long time in them, to really devour them, to really study them, to really be at his feet like a leadership session and really write down what he's saying. Now, who is this Peter? Peter is my not favorite, because I say everyone's my favorite. He is such a great man of God. He is the comeback king. He does things right, he does things wrong, but he is consistently there. He turns up every week. I love that because I always do things wrong. I am the klutz of all klutzes. If I'm going to trip over, I'm going to trip over. I say things incorrectly all the time, as you probably know in my videos. I do things that I go, why did I do that? But you know what? The thing that I learned about Peter is don't ever give up. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake. It doesn't matter if you fail. You only fail when you don't get back up on your feet and you don't keep going for Christ. You let that mistake take you out of the race. And Peter consistently does things wrong, but consistently keeps going. So as you read this incredible man of God, hear about his consistency, hear about his strength of character. Let me take you through who is Peter. Now, as you go through 1 and 2 Peter, you're going to hear that he's a leader in the church. He's strong. He's got the authority to speak into his people. Peter was saved. We're going to go through the book of Matthew. If you flicker back to the book of Matthew, we're going to go through his life. Peter is saved as his brother. They're fishing with his dad. If you go to Matthew 4, and Jesus comes along, and it says in Matthew 4:18, it says, as Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw 2 brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. Come follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. At once they left their nets and followed him. From the beginning, Peter was all in. He just left his nets, left his dad, left left his brother, took his brother, and they followed Jesus straight away, at once. You're going to hear this fire of God that comes on Peter to do things, to get out of the boat, to do things, and I love that. We've got to have that in our Christianity. As we know, he's a fisherman from that, so in those days it's kind of like a tradie. So he's not an educated man. It says in Acts, people were amazed that these were not uneducated, but not as educated as they had heard the philosophers and stuff like that. So he was married. Peter was married. Yeah, I love studying the Bible because I learn something new every time. And, when I started teaching the New Testament, Peter was married. Now, let's have a chat about that. You only hear of Peter's mother-in-law. You never hear of Peter's wife. He's off preaching the gospel and she's at home with the kids. It's this, when you read into the story and go, what does that look like? Matthew 8:14 talks about Jesus walking into Peter's house and his mother-in-law is sick. If you have a mother-in-law, you have a wife. So we can conclude that Peter was married. in Matthew 14, he walks on water. Now, I know read Matthew 14 and have a look at this account. He's the one that gets out of the boat when the waves are there and the storm and everything, and he can see Jesus. Well, he thinks it's, Jesus, he can see him out there. They've already been scared because they thought it was a ghost, and he gets out of the boat. Some people go, but he sank. He got out of the boat. There were others in the boat that didn't get out of the boat. This is Peter. He's on fire. He jumps out of the boat. Did he sink? Yes, he sank, but he got out of the boat. He was the one that walked on water. So you're going to love the character of Peter. Jesus in Matthew 16, this amazing moment, this declaration of, who am I? And he says, you are the Messiah, the Son of God. And he says, upon that rock I will build my church. And this is this amazing moment that Peter got it right. And you see him, you can imagine him going, yes, got it right. And Jesus changes his name and says, you are no longer Cephas, which is, you are Peter. Upon that rock I will, this incredible moment. Then 5 verses later, he says something else and he gets rebuked by Jesus, get behind me, Satan. But you know what? Doesn't get offended. Doesn't go, how dare he? I'm Peter. He just keeps going. You're going to love, as you read these books of Peter, fall in love with the author. The best moment I love in Matthew 17, where he's on the Transfiguration with Jesus. He gets to go up. He's part of the inner circle. So James, John, and Peter are these inner circle that Jesus takes with him and got to see more than the other disciples. He goes up to the mountain, right? And they're on the top of the mountain. Moses and Elijah turn up. Spirit beings, they turn up. Peter, in his moment of terror and fear and not sure what to do, says, Jesus, how about I build you some tents? You need to stay. You can imagine Moses and Elijah going, who is this guy? Can he not see that why would a spirit need a tent? But Mark talks about he did it because they were actually so scared that he didn't know what to say. So he just said, how about I build you some tents? I love the fact that Peter just gives it a go. Be that sort of Christian where you're there at church every time, in it, giving it a go, making mistakes, but you're consistently there. Peter cuts off the ear of a servant in the Garden of Gethsemane. We read this in John. He gets so frustrated that they're taking Jesus. He gets so angry with what is happening. He doesn't understand what is happening, that he cuts off the ear of one of the soldiers, the servant, and Jesus ends up healing it. So he denies Jesus 3 times. Now this is his pinnacle moment. Jesus is about to go to the cross, and Jesus says to him at the Passover meal, Peter, you're going to deny me? And he goes, not me, Lord, I will walk unto death. And he does. 3 times he denies Jesus, and it must have been the most heartbreaking moment. This faithful man of God that just keeps going no matter what happens, ends up denying Jesus 3 times at this pinnacle part of what is happening. And it must have just shattered him. But you know what? No matter what happens, no matter what mistakes you make, get back up. And he does. We find Peter, when Jesus raises from the dead and the women run to the house of the disciples where they're praying, Peter's already there. So he's already restored to the church. He doesn't let this moment of failure take him out. He keeps going, and he gets back up. This beautiful moment of John 21 where Jesus restores him. Imagine the fear in Peter's heart when he hears that Jesus raises from the dead. And he's like, I have to face him. I denied him 3 times and I have to face him. And Jesus restores him 3 times. You can read it in John 21. He says, 3 times do you love me, Peter? And it's a restoration of those 3 denials. He becomes the leader of the Jerusalem church. At the day of Pentecost, he gets baptized in the Holy Spirit by fire, and he preaches the best sermon that has ever been preached. 3,000 get saved. This moment of this comeback king keeps going to this moment where God uses him in this incredible capacity. He heals the sick. Read Acts. He heals the sick. His shadow. Oh, I'm so sorry. My shadow just healed you. Imagine that, walking along the street. Oh, sorry, my shadow is out of control. Like, healing people. He gets jailed for preaching Christ. He becomes a missionary in Samaria. His vision in Acts 10 turns the church around to say that the Gentiles can actually come into the church. Angels come and release him from prison. This guy lives out this incredible life, like we should. No matter what happens in your Christianity, can I say it to you today, TYB? No matter what happens, no matter the failures, Peter is an example of somebody who just keep going. Keep following Christ. Keep falling in love with Him. Just keep walking one step in front of the other. Failure is not failure when you make a mistake. Failure is not getting back up and keeping going. You know, keep walking. He ends up being, as we said, opposed by Paul. He has a bit of argy-bargy with Paul, and he ends up being an apostle or an itinerant minister to the Gentiles. Peter dies in AD 67. He is one of the apostles that is martyred by Nero. And the most history tells us that his death, they wanted to crucify him, and he said, please don't crucify me. I cannot be honoured that way, to die the same way as my Saviour. And he's actually crucified upside down, the most horrific, painful way. This man you are going to love. As you read 1 and 2 Peter, you are reading this man of God, the comeback king, the Rocky of our Bible, keeps getting up, keeps falling, keeps getting up. As you read start reading 1 and 2 Peter this week, and as you read it, know that you are sitting at this man's feet getting leadership lessons from not somebody who has lived a perfect life, somebody who has just kept going and ended up being an incredible apostle of Christ. Have fun.